Hello YouTube. This video is a response to a recent video done by Razorblade Candy.
Oh fuck, I'm being attacked by a ninja. Why me? First I get autistic guys jabbing swords at me, and now fucking Sub-Zero.
He says, should anyone receive any kind of funding for anything from society? If you say no, then you are against society.
Yes, that was this quote here. Why should you be funding the lifestyle of someone else? Well, for the same reason you can make lifestyle choices funded by someone else. This is a question of should anyone receive any kind of funding for anything from society? If you answer, no, never, then this is an argument against society. The reason humans form societies is because it gives them a survival advantage. Having a community provide you with opportunities that you otherwise would not have, allows you to exist with more flexibility and freedom of choice than if you were not a part of a community. The interdependency of the collective makes the collective stronger than the individual. This is why societies dominate over non-societies, and why it came to be that humans are herd animals that form societies. Now as far as what people should get what choices, at whose expense, that's why we have politics. All in all, I say this, regardless of what your philosophy is on a society, the degree of collectivism versus individualism, and so on, until you have created a society where no one benefits at the expense of others, do not place a roadblock in front of men when it's their turn to benefit. End quote. Perhaps some people didn't understand that. Maybe I should try to re-explain. A society is a collection of individuals. Within this society there is collectivism and individualism. Collectivism and individualism is not a binary, it's a fluid spectrum. In order to be a member of a society, you must part with some degree of individualism. But how much, and in what ways, is all up for debate. That's why we have politics, because it is an ongoing, never-ending argument, and the rules and general consensus will change from time to time to adapt to a changing environment. Positive and negative rights work like this. A negative right is something like, you have the right to buy an ice cream. This is a negative right, meaning no one is allowed to take the right from you. But it is not an obligation. You can buy an ice cream. You don't have to buy an ice cream. It is also not a positive right, meaning that someone owes you an ice cream. A positive right is an entitlement, in which others are obligated to fulfill. An example of a positive right is once I select the ice cream, and hand you my money, I now have a positive right to ice cream, meaning the store clerk, upon taking my money, is obligated to hand me my ice cream that I have an entitlement to. However, this is a positive right in the context of an exercised negative right, the right of contract. Both anarchists and libertarians respect the right of contract and the right of might to enforce contract, except that in an anarchist society, every human being now has authority to act as enforcer, and in an anarcho-capitalist society, only the contract provider and obligate have a right to use force, or pay to have a third party enforce it, because justice is a commodity to be bought. My statement is really that if you are against positive rights, in a non-contractual setting, you are effectively anti-society. Since a society is a matter of giving up some individualism, to create obligations, positive rights, to form interdependency, which is beneficial, and why humans formed societies. Libertarians and minarchists want to create a society of only negative rights, plus the right to contract and the right of force by a selected body of authority. Anarchists want to create a society of only negative rights, and any individual may act as the body of authority for violation of a negative right, meaning, we all get to choose our own interpretation of the NAP and act as judge, jury and executioner. Every damn one of us. All justice is vigilante justice. We'll all get to enforce the rules of our anarchist society as equals, and of course, those rules are all subjective, and punishment fit the crime is also subjective, and it's not like there is an official judiciary to actually judge whether or not an act violates the NAP or other golden rule, or whether the suspect is actually guilty, or determine what use of force was just punishment. Not like we have an official body. We'll all just wing it, can't see that going wrong or anything, and even if they start by writing down 1,000,001 rules, and agree to live by it, as always in the real world, new circumstances will arise which will require reinterpretation of the old rules, and there will be no official body to make the ruling. It'll be up to each and every one of us to decide for ourselves, and when you think about it, that would be the worst tyranny of all. Every human being around you is now judge, jury and executioner. We will have gone from a select few people elected to be people with guns telling us what to do, to every human being in our society being people with guns telling us what to do. Am I the only person who pictures a society where every 5 seconds there's a million unresolvable disputes where a guy with a gun says to his neighbor, I spent all day mowing and raking my yard, your lack of lawn upkeep has allowed all the leaves from your yard to blow into mine. You are now obligated to rake them up for having your property violate my property. And the other guy saying, I ain't doing shit, and both of them holding guns on each other, no body of authority to pass final judgment on who is obligated to do what. Yeah, anarchy, it works because people just magically get along, and it's been government this whole time creating division to trick us into thinking we need them. Anyhow, my point was, a society is a set of negative and positive rights to create interdependency. Wishing to remove all possible interdependency is thus anti-society, and the degree of positive and negative rights is a matter of necessary ongoing political struggle, and the benefit of being in a society is the freedom and flexibility to do things you otherwise could not do, which is dependent upon your positive rights, and positive rights will either be government obligations paid for by taxes, or society's obligations enforced by government.
And this is directed towards anarchists and libertarians. So, what I'll say to that is, anarchists and libertarians aren't necessarily against people receiving funding from society. What they would be against is the use of force in that regard.
I meant government-sponsored, not charity. This would also include when corporations give funding as a tax deduction, based upon political pressures to do so. In other words, why can't men have what the girls have? Why do so-called men's rights activists insist that government pandering is exclusively a thing that should be reserved for women? And I know, you're against women having those things too. Well then, go work on removing them, but until you've accomplished it, shut up and don't tell men not to put their hand in the cookie jar. I know, your objection as an anarchist is that there shouldn't be force and coercion, but guess what, buddy? Reality is filled with force and coercion, so until you find some way of magically abolishing it, don't fucking tread on the MRM. Please work on building your anarchist utopia before scolding us men to start acting like we already live in one.
So, you know, if people are going to voluntarily fund something, then that's one thing, but it's the act of being stolen from that they are against.
I'm not going to repeat all the details of my argument that taxes are technically a debt for services you use, whether you realize it or not, whether you asked for their availability or not. I'm going to put it to you like this: when I use the word funding, I am clearly making a reference to government entitlement programs, which are pulled from the tax pool. I am not referring to people's charity and goodwill or any of that crap. Women are getting their handouts, ergo, women are already stealing from the tax pool. What's wrong with men stealing from the tax pool? Why does that become a no-no? How come women get to do it? What I don't get is this: you claim taxation is theft. Okay, whatever, let's just roll with it. You're already being stolen from. Does it matter what the thieves are doing with your money? They're taking your money. You're doing nothing about it. They are giving your money to old people, sick people, women, corporate bailouts, themselves, and dropping bombs on Arabs. I hear you going grumble grumble grumble. Ethics ethics ethics. Morals morals morals. But, you're still being stolen from. You are doing nothing about it, except throwing a shit fit when men say, hey, in the name of equality, Uncle Sam, can I have some of the money from the tax pool? Again, women take from it, and that's fine, but men must not take from the women's piggy bank. Again, it is some hilarious fear-driven bullshit when we bellyache about the government and system being for the benefit of women, but then go apeshit when someone suggests that we put our hands in the women's piggy bank, and that us men get our share of the taxes we put in, and the anarchist, and all too often libertarian, justify the need to keep men's hands out of the women's piggy bank by saying taxation is theft as if this is relevant. Is it not theft when women take from the pool? Is it not theft when Israel takes from the pool? Is it not theft when the homeless, or the elderly, or the corporations take from the pool? Your issue is really and truly that there is a pool to begin with. In your mind, there shouldn't be a pool. The pool is from government-enforced tax collection. Again, this is infinitely motherfucking irrelevant to men putting their middle finger in the air and saying you want my vote. I don't care who you are. What are you doing for male equality? Whoever sucks MRA cocks gets MRA votes. There's the deal, politicians. Again, men taking from the pool is not your problem, so stop bellyaching. It is the fact that the pool exists is your problem. Your job, dear anarchists and anarcho-capitalists, is to dry up the pool so that there isn't a pool to draw from. But until you have succeeded, until that day comes, There is a pool, and if you tell MRAs that they can't take from that pool, you have made yourself an enemy of the men's rights movement, plain and simple. Don't you get it? Every time men take from the pool, there is less for the women to take from it. The reason women get so much is because we're all in libertarian mode, smacking each other's hand saying no, 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 that's socialism, that's big government, taxation is theft, so men take nothing, and women get it all to themselves, is the end result. Your issue is that there is a pool, a piggy bank. Well, okay, you go work on making the piggy bank disappear. But as long as it's there, I want my share, so get the fuck out of my way.
Let's see, another thing he says is, if the government gives benefits to both men and women, then it will break the system. You know, I actually like that point, although it makes me wonder if Razor Blade Candy is a closet anarchist and is hoping that that the combined efforts to receive government funding for women with men together will crush the system and bring us into an anarchy.
How else did you think you people were going to get your anarchy? By voting Republican? Because voting for politicians to put themselves out of business is a fruitless endeavor. Did you think you were going to get there by sitting on your hands and just not voting? Like if you personally starve the system of your votes, the system would magically disappear? Newsflash, the system will go on just fine as long as there is one human being willing to vote, and there will always be at least one group or one person voting. Hell, I'd break the strike and say, dear Republicans and Democrats, you each want to win this election, and I am the only person voting, so what you gonna do to earn my vote? My balls are dry as a desert, so who's going to remedy this situation by sucking them? Come on now, who wants my vote? So again, you can't bring about anarchy by not voting. You're never going to pressure a politician or a political party into putting themselves out of jobs. Were you planning an armed rebellion against a world superpower who has empowered you to the will of the people? Because if so, that shit would be hilarious. A bunch of limp-wristed sheltered suburban white boys forming an armed rebellion to take down the world superpower so that they could destroy their own government, thereby becoming the new governing body, and then just automatically relinquishing power once they got it, so that there could be sustained anarchy, and just helping no group like MS-13 would take over in your absence. But as silly as some of you anarchists are, it wouldn't surprise me if that actually was your plan. If you want anarchy, overburden the system until it can no longer sustain itself. I've already stated, men reaching for the same handouts as women, will have the effect of denying women handouts, or putting us on par with them, just long enough to cause a massive downward turn, and a relinquishing of all entitlement programs as a last-ditch effort to keep us afloat, or absolute collapse of the system, and thus anarchy. In your mind, the day the system collapses, there shall be freedom and peace on earth, and one united people holding hands and singing Kumbaya. So it's good for you anarchists. In reality it will be competing gangs battling for supremacy as machine gun fire fills the night and we are eventually settled by a foreign power, who will now have control over America. But you anarchists believe this is a government-created myth, and sunshine and paradise will ensue, so again, hooray for anarchy, or possibly the end of every drop of socialism. The massive shrinking of government, selling all of our nukes to China, and the selling of all natural resources to corporations that will rape our land and hold us in poverty. You know, a massive victory for the libertarians and anarcho-capitalists. In other words, all you people saying no no, no male entitlement programs, are causing the very system and circumstances you claim to hate. Doing it my way will result in either libertarian victory, men's rights victory, or anarchist victory, and you'll either be happy as fuck, or horribly depressed by the reality that when all of your wishes are granted, hell on earth was the result. But either way, anarchists, anarcho-capitalists, and libertarians, will finally get to test their utopian theory. The system is broken, we are like a plane with no fuel, coasting on our momentum. The system will collapse. I am not here to save it. I am here to help build the foundation for an ideology that will be the driving force and inspiration for building our new world from the ashes of the old. And no, our new world will not be a utopia. It will suck, just not as much as the old world. And right now we have a choice. We can continue to feed the system with our blood and keep it chugging along as long as possible, or bring it down in a hurry. And perhaps it is telling of my mentality, that I confess I do not write what I do for the benefit of the old men of today. I write it for the benefit of the young men of tomorrow, a system that consumes less blood, and does so from both the men and the women, making a functioning society less of a burden on the backs of men. Do I advocate for anarchy? In a way, I advocate for a collapse of the current system, which is already broken beyond repair. It will have to radically change to survive, or it will die. Either way, the current system is unsustainable.
Let's see. The other thing he says is, how about we remove all regulations from corporations and let the corporations make us into slaves? I'm paraphrasing that. That's basically what he said, though. Well, the thing about that is, corporations are actually a creation of government. They're a shield, metaphorically speaking, to protect business owners from the bad actions of their businesses.
Kinda sorta. The interconnectivity between corporation and government does effectively make corporation a government branch not directly controlled by voting, and voting on government to regulate corporations will expand government power, plus it pisses off the libertarians, conservatives, and anarcho-capitalists when you try to control corpgov, the hybrid that we just call corporation. My objection to corporation is that it is a body granted constitutional rights, yet effectively acts as a branch of government. Government has powers, people have rights, and also, that we the people have no electoral power over the corporation. They say vote with your wallet. Well, that can get expensive. I like voting with my votes. It's a lot cheaper.
And as far as removing regulations from the corporations, and them making us into slaves, well, they would only be able to do that with the help of the government.
No, power was not born with government. If people have a thing you want or need, they have power over you, whether it's money, product, service, or a means to those things.
See, it's because of the government that we can't fight back against the corporations. They have the power of the state on their side. Otherwise, there'd be actions that we could take not involving government against the corporations.
What the serious fuck are you talking about? People file class action suits against corporations all the time, a thing that is only possible due to government. Private businesses get sued all the time. The people are suing the fuck out of companies and corporations left and right. Exactly how is the government stopping us from doing what to a corporation? Granted, we can't throw Molotov cocktails through store windows. But is that a bad thing?
And he goes on to say, divorce yourself from all other movements and philosophies or you are tainted by gynocentrism. I don't think that there's a case to be made that anarchism is gynocentric. Maybe with a philosophy of nonviolence, I guess you could say that that's in a way gynocentric because men have a greater ability to do violence.
How is the removal of violence anti-male, considering that most violence is dished out on men? Men would fare rather well in a non-violent atmosphere. If women were forced to survive without male assistance, they'd become violent as well, or be annihilated for being too physically weak to survive in a competitive atmosphere. So gender equality means less violence from men, and more from women, and we are already seeing that trend take place. It's not equal, but it's getting there. Also, a philosophy of non-violence does nothing to actually stop violence. We are already an anti-violence, anti-theft, anti-murder, anti-rape culture. But people still do these things. It's just fascinating to see the utopian idealism come out of the mouth of anarchists. Like, hey, you know what sucks? Violence. It totally sucks. We should build a world where violence is a no-no. As if we haven't already built a society where violence is against the law and against our cultural values. Why not just incorporate never growing old into your philosophy? Because I sure would like to live in a society where no one grows old. because it's like totally against our philosophy and stuff.
Since they are typically stronger. However, anarchism, you know, I don't think that there's a way that you could say that that's gynocentric. So, anyway, that's all I've got to say about that. By the way, big fan Razor. Love your videos, and have a good day.
Gynocentrism is built into our DNA, both men and women. It is a behavioral survival trait that existed in us even in our pre-human era, and is possibly found in all species. The value of the sex is based upon the limitation of their reproductive organs. A male can replenish sperm very quickly, making his value very minimal. The female takes time to incubate the fetus, thus she is more valuable. It is an evolutionary survival strategy that instinctive behavior be designed to put the interest, welfare, and well-being of the female ahead of the male. Species that don't exhibit this behavior will lose to those who do. Gynocentrism is the default state of being. You either recognize gynocentrism, work against it like an airplane working against gravity, or you by default are gynocentric, as a plane is by default grounded, to put your energy and focus into something else. Building an anarchist utopia, for example, you are deviating time and energy from fighting gynocentrism, a bit like diverting power from a plane's engines for some other luxury. Every bit of power removed from the engine is by default a pro-crashing action. Not to say the plane will crash, but you divert enough energy from the engine, and it will. An argument has been brought up that feminists use government against men, or government carries out their dirty work or whatever have you, thus the absence of government will be good for males. Well, that's a bit like saying because women have a tendency to run us over with their cars, we'll do away with gasoline. No gasoline, no cars, no more men getting run over. Or if an abusive mother beats you with a belt, you can hide or throw away the belt, and that will stop the abuse. It doesn't work like that. Furthermore, when women say I feel unsafe, men will instinctively do whatever it takes to make them feel safe, no matter which guy needs his ass kicked. You ever look at some guy's woman the wrong way at a bar, and suffer the consequences, without any help from government? You ever get beat up at school, by some guy, because you upset some female? Did government do that to you? A government is not needed for a society where men are strung up and stoned for raping a woman, or catcalling. And in closing, I shall say this: anarchism as a permanent functioning state of human society, has not, and cannot exist. Anarchism falls into two categories, the left and the right. It's pretty much anarcho-capitalism that falls on the right and is the new current crop of corporate cock-sucking Tea Party types. They're anarchists and libertarians that went off the deep end into Cuckooville and hated by real anarchists, link in the description, and of course actual anarchists, which are anti-government communists. Yes, it is an oxymoron, and they are morons, effectively leftist hippies who are fundamentally and irredeemably anti-property and anti-capitalism. Capitalism is the staple of the right wing, and is it sad that I would have to describe a communist as a functioning anarchist, and describe an anarchist as a non-functioning communist? And doesn't saying non-functioning communist sound a lot like saying non-working broken automobile? There's a certain ironic redundancy to it. So the right-wing anarchists that we see so much of today, the anarcho-capitalists, I swear, are just Star Trek Ferengi. Freedom is a commodity to be purchased by the highest bidder. They seem like libertarians that were bought off by the corporations. See Tea Party. Anarchy fundamentally fails because it's against human nature. It is utopian in the idea that people just magically get along and are honest. The individuals that make up this philosophy have an incense and peppermints and lava lamps and pot-smoking hippie notion that force and coercion are unnecessary things implemented by the man on behalf of the bourgeois, onto the proletariat. I hate to break it to you, but might makes right. Always has, always will. It was the gospel of the ancient world, and the logic of today. Anarchy uses government as its scapegoat for why people misbehave. Says things like, riots and roaming gangs jockeying for power is a myth. That's just what the government wants you to think. They want you to believe you need them, so they make up lies that without them, it would be chaos. But in reality it's a non-violent utopia of mutual cooperation. Okay, look, the government also lied to you when it mandated warning labels. Safety organizations unnecessarily label harmless things as dangerous, just to give off the appearance that this agency is needed. But in reality, man, bleach is good for you, and if you stick your hand under a lawnmower while it's running, it dispenses ice cream. Don't let these bureaucratic safety regulation agencies trick you, man. That unnecessary government warning label on milk that says it expires. Oh come on, man, you don't really believe milk expires, do you? You notice there ain't no expiration date on a cow's tit? You really think that shit expires? Go ahead and drink some. Viva la revolution. For the sake of effectiveness, it benefits me to have power. For the sake of power, it benefits me to be popular. For the sake of popularity, it benefits me to pander to anarchists and extreme-end libertarians that make up half this movement. But also, I lack the patience for weak-ass bullshit, and believe that an honest, no matter how unpopular or offensive, message, for the sake of intellectual honesty and clarity, will pay off in the long run. Therefore I will not pander to people's inner child, or their outer-pot-smoking peace-loving hippy-dippy idealistic and utopian fantasies. Anarchism is an unworkable utopian fantasy, period. But if believing in your free world utopia is your faith, your savior, your Jesus, then so be it. I don't give a fuck. Just don't stand in the way of the men's rights movement, or hijack the movement with your utopian idealism. I will demand this government pander to the males in any and every way possible. I will fight tooth and nail to prevent government pandering to women, until the scales are balanced. And I will teach a philosophy of anti-gynocentrism to future generations. And as I said, men demanding government pander to them, will either cause equality or cause the system to be overburdened, which will end with either a massive downsizing in government, to which the libertarians ought to love, or it will just straight up break the system, defaulting in anarchy. It's just unfortunate that you're not going to enjoy the anarchy when it gets here. Either way, even in accordance with your own desires, forbidding or discouraging men from seeking government aid and pro-male government regulations, is antithetical to your own goal, but more important, antithetical to mine. Before you can act in accordance with the rules of your utopian philosophy, you have to first get there and erect that utopia, and thus far, I have laid a workable blueprint to getting there, the anarchy part, not the make-believe utopian part. I've said that communism failed, but technically, communism was never accomplished. What failed was the Marxian socialist experiment. Communism was supposed to have been the utopian outcome. It begins with a seizure of the current government, then a strong government is erected, all the evil capitalist pigs will be removed from power, by force if necessary, and then a reprogramming of culture. Since culture was crooked and impure, corrupted by religion and capitalism, every facet of society would have to be reprogrammed. Once we've reprogrammed people, and taught them how to behave in a communist society, the need for government would be reduced. As time goes on, the people will be more and more communist in mind and spirit, requiring the government less and less, sort of like a parent raising a child, teaching it wrong from right, teaching it how to be safe and get along, and function. Eventually the child grows up and doesn't need the parent, and parental authority shrinks, until a complete separation of child and parent occurs. The government was just acting like a parent, and would eventually no longer be needed, and then people could exist in a perfect society, a community of helping each other, equal responsibility, equal effort, equal outcome, perfect harmony, non-government coerced interdependency, just voluntary communityism. That is communism. Unfortunately the experiment failed miserably and never came close to a phase where the strong government would shrink itself due to lack of being needed. Anarchists are people who believe they can achieve the communist outcome, and skip the totalitarian government reprogramming the people part. Sort of like, we can run before we learn to walk. Communism and anarchy are both great ideas, and there is nothing wrong with the basic philosophy of either. The problem is human beings aren't robots. People are just one step removed from primates. We're only partially rational creatures. Again, the idea of my philosophy is like totally awesome because it is an anti-violence clause. As if societies are actually based on a principle of pro-aggression. Why not just build a society on a non-child rape principle? There are an infinite amount of bad things people do, that we as a society already overwhelmingly detest. But detesting, illegalizing, and in every way discouraging, doesn't actually stop these bad things from happening. Your philosophy is only bad because it doesn't work. It only doesn't work because it ignores the reality of human nature. Communism and anarchy can't work because people are lazy, deceitful, selfish creatures ruled by fear and anger. Not that any of this shit matters. I don't care what unworkable retarded shit people believe in, as long as it doesn't interfere with men achieving equality. And I've already come to accept that there is no getting through to the anarchists and anarcho-capitalists within our movement. I'm already aware of your arguments. In spite of everything I just said, the arguments are, but taxation is theft, but government is just people with guns, but government interference with corporations only makes it worse. You're a retard and know nothing. Just because it hasn't worked in the past doesn't mean it can't work. Absence of proof is not proof of absence. But if the government got out of our lives, people would be richer and there'd be less violence and blah blah blah. Government is what makes bad things happen. Free market will fix everything. Free market saves man. Free market saves, praise the free market, hallelujah. Cops don't protect people, they just pick up the bodies. Thus cops aren't needed. Laws don't disappear just because their enforcement disappeared. People will obey the laws even without enforcement because free market non-aggression principle. People are naturally cooperative, peace-loving hippies, and it's the government that makes people behave badly and tells us we need them. Those are a handful of arguments I'm going to both get and ignore. I can't waste my valuable time that I already don't have enough of. I'm not trying to talk to these people. Their escapist pseudo-religion is too intertwined into their coping mechanisms, too emotionally centered, for logic to reach. I am talking to the sane and the rational people who are here to fight for the equality of men, and not utopian escapists. I am trying to drive home the message of why it is vital that we not take our eyes off the ball. We must focus on equality for men, and divorce ourselves from all other philosophical distractions that would create ideals and principles that would conflict with the necessary steps and viewpoints of men's rights activism. Far too often I hear it is wrong for our movement to do blank because it conflicts with the values of my utopian faith, and we must all stand firm and not budge until my utopia comes to fruition. Then all will be right as rain. I'm paraphrasing that, of course. Too much of this utopian bullshit, too much idealism without substance, too much Bible Belt conservatism of family values and putting women back in the kitchen so that our boys can be manly men, type of reactionary thinking. Isn't it amazing feminists have so many differing opinions but they all keep their eye on the prize, while we stand in a never-ending tug of war with ourselves even in cases when we do agree with each other. The feminists, with all their hypocrisy and differing opinions, are united by one unwavering concept: what's good for women is good, and nothing else matters. If equality for men is actually something worth fighting for, and not just some afterthought, then we must learn to take the mentality that what is good for men, in relation to women, is good, and all other things are inconsequential. But if your utopia, or saving the animals, or fixing Congress, or the war in the Middle East, or exposing the truth behind 9/11, or fixing the economy, is more important to you than men having rights, you're of no use to me, and are actually an obstacle I have to step on to get to male equality.